Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a small group to begin with, and this is usually the case. And as we continue on with the webinar, more people usually join in. So thank you very much for being here today. And I'd like to introduce you to my colleague and wonderful friend, Miss Aimee Nelson. And she is the director for the Center for Careers in Teaching at Cal State Fullerton. And we are so pleased that she's able to present to us today. Thank you, Aimee.
Thank you, Cynthia. And thank you everyone for joining us. We hopefully have an exciting webinar for you tonight, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about becoming a teacher. So superheroes wanted. We definitely need more superheroes in the world, and our teachers are definitely that. So I'm going to talk to you tonight a little bit about becoming a teacher, the pathway to teaching from undergraduate coursework, getting your bachelor's degree, moving on to a teacher preparation pathway program or a teaching credential program, and different opportunities in the field of education that you might move into, or maybe you're interested in now that you want to pursue, and we can talk a little bit about a few of those areas. But my webinar really is focusing on becoming a teacher. So if you've joined us tonight and you already have a teaching credential, or you've been teaching for a few years, some of this might be information you already know. So please, you're welcome to stay, but you would not hurt my feelings if you logged off right now. So this is really geared for someone who is interested in becoming a teacher, needs to know more about the pathway to do that. So, and I'll share some resources with you and things like that along the way, and stop to answer questions and all that stuff. So hopefully it'll be a little interactive. So I will move on. Hopefully you all can see my screen. I have a PowerPoint up. The first slide says superheroes wanted, future teachers apply. So please speak up now if you don't see that. And also, I think everyone has already, at least from what I can see on my screen, go ahead and mute your own computers or your own microphones, because we can hear everything that happens. So if your pizza delivery guy shows up or your dog barks or something like that, we'll be able to hear it. So just make sure your microphones are muted until you're ready to answer or ask a question. But I will stop every now and again to make sure we can answer questions and things like that for you. So let's see. Oh, I think I need to use my mouse to move forward. Let's see if this is my first webinar, you guys, so you're kind of my guinea pigs. Okay, there it went. I thought it wasn't going to advance for a second. So I kind of talked about this a little bit, but tonight we're going to talk about the pathways to teaching. In a second, we will have some time to do a little poll so I can get to know my audience a little better. I want to make sure that I sort of touch some areas that you might be interested in based on your interests. I will mainly focus, like I said, on pathways to teaching. So for those of you who are not already teachers, this will really be focused on you. And towards the end, I'll talk a little bit about additional careers in education you might be interested in pursuing, and then some resources, some financial aid resources, and some good websites, and some tips on things you can do in preparation for whatever your career goals are. And then we'll definitely have opportunities for questions as we go. So I am Aimee Nelson, as Cynthia said earlier. I'm the director of the Center for Careers in Teaching. I've actually been in the College of Education here at Cal State Fullerton. Either today or tomorrow is my 10th anniversary. I can't remember the exact date I started. I think it was March 8th. But believe it or not, I've been in the College of Ed for 10 years now, so kind of cool. It's gone by really fast, but I've been in the Center for Careers in Teaching for about 3.5 of those years, and I love the center. If you don't know about us, we are in the Education Classroom building at Cal State Fullerton, if you're a Fullerton student, in room 379. We're an advising center, so what we mainly do is make sure that students who are interested in a career in education have a place to go to talk to an advisor, to get career advising, education plans. We make sure that you're taking the right courses to get into credential programs, or a graduate program if that's your ultimate interest, or whatever your goals are. We'll help design a pathway for you to make sure it fits your goals. We're also a space you can come on campus and sit and study. We have computers on campus. We have free printing. We often provide snacks. We have, during finals week, we typically set up the center so that you can really just come and have a space to sit and study in between finals and things like that, so you don't have to go home if possible. So it's a really great space on campus, and many people don't know about us, especially undergraduate students. And if you are a future teacher, you absolutely should come see us. So if you don't know about us, come to EC379. My information is there, so if you do have questions after the webinar tonight, feel free to email me directly, call me. There's also information towards the end of the webinar about the center and how to contact us and things like that. We do 30-minute advising appointments, that they are appointment-based only. We don't have walk-in advising, but lots of great resources. So I wanted to make sure I did a little plug for the center as well. So we hope to see you in there if we haven't before. We have lots of regulars too, and they're quite helpful. So if you are a future teacher, you have peers who hang out there that are really, really helpful. So I wanted to get learn a little bit more about each of you. So hopefully I do this right. Like I said, this is my first webinar, so I did a few polls. I don't know if I opened up poll number 1. Do you guys see a poll on your screen now? Do you see anything, Cynthia? If you see a poll, you should be able to answer. There's 3 questions on there. Are you guys able to see questions you can click on? And
yeah, I just submitted the answers.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to answer my own questions in some minutes. I'll give you all a minute or so to. No polling is popping up right now. Oh, but one did when you joined. Oh, okay. Right. At this point, we should be doing poll number 1. If you can see a couple of polls, that's okay. Go ahead and submit just poll number 1. I'm not sure exactly what you see, unfortunately, but it's looking like it's working for some of you.
I'm sorry, Aimee, you already have 5 responses, or okay. six responses now for poll, for the poll.
Do you know how I see the responses?
I'm going to end the poll. Do you see it now?
I do not. Let me see.
Oh, you know what? I could share the results. Let's see if
oh, there. I see them now. I hope you guys can see them as well. So it looks like most of you are not currently a student, but we do have maybe 1 or 2 undergrad students, a current credential student or 2. Mostly, if you are a student, it looks like Cal State Fullerton students. And you're all future teachers, so it looks like for the most part. I think that was me. I'm already a superhero. I'm not a teacher. I don't have a teaching credential, but I am an educator. I've actually been at Cal State Fullerton for almost 19 years. So Cal State Fullerton has definitely made me a superhero. So, so cool. Thank you. I wanted to get to know you all a little bit better and kind of gauge the room too, so I make sure that I'm covering some areas that you all might be interested in. So thank you for participating. I have another poll later on. And I will try to pay attention to the chat as well and see if I can answer questions as I go to, if things pop up that I can answer.
Also, I'd like to add that if you would like to go ahead and at the bottom of your screen, you should see an icon labeled chat. If you go ahead and click on that, that will open up a chat window for you. And if you have any questions during the presentation, I'll be monitoring the chat.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
It's nice to have friends in here when you're doing this, especially when it's your first one. We're also recording this session, so if you would like to go back and watch it again, if you forgot something and want to review, that will be posted on our website as well. So it lives in perpetuity. Like I said earlier, mainly I'm going to talk about the teaching pathway, how to become a teacher, especially in the state of California, which is quite unique compared to many other states in the United States. But I will touch on a couple of other things, mainly the first 5 things listed there. So we do see a lot of students in the center who are interested in becoming a college or university professor, which is much different than a teacher in the public school setting. In TK is what we call transitional kindergarten. So most school districts now offer a preschool year 1 year before kindergarten. So that's transitional kindergarten. So that's what we traditionally think of when we talk about teachers. We do have a program also at Cal State Fullerton for folks who want to be student affairs practitioners. So that's a master's degree in higher education. It's actually a master's degree, Master of Science degree in education with a concentration in higher ed. We just refer to it as the higher ed program, so I'll touch on that a little bit. Also the instructional design and technology. Of course, I have to give a plug to Cynthia's program because that is one of our absolutely best programs in the College of Education at Cal State Fullerton. It was the first online, completely online master's program, and it has grown by leaps and bounds since then. So I might have Cynthia chime in when we get to that point because she knows the program much better than I do. And then we do get lots of questions in the center as well about becoming a school counselor, so I'll touch on that a little bit. But there are lots of different things, areas you can focus on or very specific job opportunities in the general field of education. So it is quite broad, and you may start out as a teacher with a credential in the TK-12 school system, but you may go on after that and maybe get a master's degree or a doctorate or other training and do lots of other different things in education, things that are related to education, but not necessarily what we traditionally think of as being a teacher. So things like becoming a curriculum developer, a librarian, that's a pretty popular program now. There's a lot of digital technology now with library science. That's a program you can do online, and we are, I think, kind of in a little bit of a shortage there in terms of looking, finding librarians, much like teaching, but that's definitely related. Occupational therapy is quite popular as well. So there's lots of growing fields that are very much associated with education, and being a teacher first would absolutely prepare you for a lot of those things. So that's just to say that, starting out as a teacher is a great pathway, and we definitely need more teachers. We need really good teachers, but there are lots of other things that you may find an interest in as you become a teacher and work and meet people and network and all of those good things that will all be, fun and exciting. So there's so many things out there you probably don't even know of yet. So the programs, like I said, I'm really going to highlight the first 5 programs. Most of these, well, you'll see on the list there, the ones that have the little asterisk next to them are mainly would require a post-secondary or graduate program to be qualified for positions like that. And then the programs that are listed there in red highlight are programs that we actually offer here at Cal State Fullerton. So we can talk about those a little more directly. So I always like to touch a little bit on myths about teaching and teaching preparation, the pathway to become a teacher, because we hear these things in the center. Students ask us these questions all the time, and we wonder, where did these things come from? But they're obviously out there. So it's just, we make sure that we dispel those myths, because they are not true, they are myths. But there absolutely is a teaching shortage. We don't necessarily see it quite the same in Orange County as in many other counties or other areas in California, but it is most of our students in our credential programs at Cal State Fullerton, they tend to be students who grow up in this area, who want to stay in this area, probably teach at a school they went to, which is great. So there's not always, typically when a position opens, there's lots of applicants and they fill pretty easily. But there are parts of California that absolutely need teachers, our rural areas, our Title I high needs schools, which there are actually many of in Orange County. Lots of areas that need teachers, and so those are opportunities for new teachers to start in. I always like to share the story about a friend of mine who finished our multiple subject program, and she wasn't able to get a job in this area. She lives in Fullerton, but the districts in our area weren't hiring, or they were so competitive. She never offered any of the positions, unfortunately. So she ended up taking a job out in Palm Springs for her first 2 years of teaching, which to some people might sound crazy, and I realize this is not for everybody, but it's an opportunity for her to get her foot in a classroom, get her experience, especially as a new teacher. So she rented an apartment out there, lived out there during the week, and came home during the weekends, because she does have a family. She has a husband and a couple of kids, and so lots of other responsibilities outside of work, but she didn't want to move the whole family there because her kids were already here in the school districts. And so she took the opportunity to get the job in Palm Springs. She did 2 years there, and then she got a job here in the Fullerton school districts. So it worked out for her. Definitely a challenge, and not everybody can do that, but it's just something to consider when you do become a teacher and you're looking for your first teaching position. It might be competitive in this area, but there is a teaching shortage. We absolutely have jobs elsewhere. So it might be, there might be other places you can look first and then come back to this area if that's your ultimate goal. But, you know, school districts are hiring more. Fortunately, they're getting some money back in their budgets, which is great. The baby boomers are retiring, and there's more and more coming. Some put it off when we thought many of them were going to retire about 5 years ago. Some of them put it off because of the recession. So now that we're coming back from that, many of them are finally retiring. They're feeling like they're able to do that. So the hiring, there's definitely more hiring coming up in the school districts, and the teacher preparation programs are definitely not preparing the number of teachers in terms to fill the need in California. So that need is really going to start coming up here in Orange County as well. And especially in our areas like the STEM field, so math and science, always hiring teachers, working with kids with special needs. So special ed teachers, definitely a high need in some subject areas, other subject areas in like the high school settings. But there's definitely going to be a need in this county as well. So just keep your mind open, you know, when you're looking for a job, when you finally finish your credential. I think a lot of people stay away from teaching as a profession because I think they can't make really good money and support themselves or their families if they become teachers. That's definitely not true. And obviously, so this statistic here, the average salary in 2016 was 70 to 76,000, and that's across the state. So obviously it's going to be maybe higher or lower in some areas depending on where you live. Obviously Orange County is pretty expensive, so our teacher salaries tend to be a little bit higher. So also LA. So you're not going to start off at that, obviously, but you know, in education, the more years of experience and the more education you get, you have a better rate of pay usually as well. And I'll show you a breakdown of that here at the next slide. But you can absolutely make a really decent wage, and there's lots of opportunities to make even more money. You can work, you know, summer school and do things like that. Benefits are obviously really good as a teacher, so that's something that I don't think, especially young folks, don't always consider that when you're looking for jobs, but that's absolutely important, especially as you start to have your own families. So I think that's just a myth that definitely teachers don't get paid what they, I think, really ultimately deserve, but it is absolutely a wage that you can live off of and have a nice living. I have a colleague who teaches. He's been teaching for about 13 or 14 years now. He's a math teacher, and he's still quite young, and he's already making 6 figures. He does some other extra things, so he's not just teaching, but he does things for his district. He does summer school. So he makes a decent wage. His wife was able to go to school and get her credential, and he supported her while she did that. So absolutely, you can make a decent wage as a teacher. One question we get a lot too is if I finish a combined credential master's program, I won't get hired by a district. That's actually not true. I wanted to throw that one in because we hear that all the time from students, that a district won't hire them because they'll have to pay them more money if they come out with a credential and master's combined. And I will talk about that program in a second, but that's absolutely not true. Districts all the time, principals, folks in charge of HR, they'll tell us that's not true. We want the best teacher. So if that means we have to pay them more, we'll pay them more. But it doesn't matter what they're, as long as you know they're fully prepared, of course. If the better teacher candidate also has a master's degree, we have to pay them more. We're not going to pick the lesser teacher because we have to pay the other one more. So anyway, that's definitely a myth. I wanted to put that out there. And our program, or all of our programs in the College of Ed, are nationally accredited. So a lot of students assume, there's definitely a myth out there, that you can go to another state and automatically your teaching credential is good in that state. And that's not the case. A national accreditation does not mean that your credential is like a US credential. It's still a California that's, a credential that's valid only in California. It doesn't mean you can't easily move to another state and maybe, you know, fill out an application or pay a fee or something and have a credential in that state, but it's not an automatic. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. So those are some pretty common things we hear. about teaching. So this was the slide I was mentioning a few minutes ago about starting salaries. This is in Orange County. So this is showing you a few of our local school districts and what they're, not necessarily just starting salaries, but you'll see here, and I think I can make little notes on this. This is super exciting. So like as an example, this is the Fullerton School District, and the way the school districts pay you, and this is actually something that's negotiated between the school districts and the teachers union. So the California Teachers Association helps determine what teachers are going to be paid in the school districts. And so they look for teachers depending on what level of education you have. So if you come out of a credential program, you're probably going to be at this in this column or this row at this level. So a credential program is typically about 30 to probably 45 units typically. So you would be started at this pay rate here, so in this row, in any of these school districts. And you can see there's a little bit of a range even in our local school districts. And then it just goes up from there. A bachelor's degree plus 45 units maybe is like a credential with an added authorization or something. Bachelor's degree plus 60 units. This is probably someone who has a bachelor's degree, maybe in a master's degree. So you can see it just goes up from there, which is exciting because you also, as a teacher, are probably going to be someone who wants to continue their education. You need to constantly sort of renew your education. You want to go out and get professional development and maybe get another advanced degree. And that's just going to benefit you as you do that in your salary. So just wanted to show you an example of that. Okay, so how do you become a teacher? Hopefully you're all enjoying my, oops, I need to erase my annotations. They didn't go away there, but whoops, let me go back, sorry. Let's see, maybe I'll clear all drawing, there we go, okay. So in California, in order to become a teacher, you need a bachelor's degree and a teaching credential, and bam, you're a teacher. So hopefully you're enjoying my little superhero template. So the state of California, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we're kind of unique in that most other states allow you to get a credential with your bachelor's degree. California wants you to have your subject matter preparation at the bachelor's degree level. So while you're getting your bachelor's degree, you're learning the subject area you're going to be teaching, and then you do the teaching credential in what we call a fifth-year program. Typically, it's not always your fifth year, but we call it a fifth-year program, and that's your teaching credential program, your teacher preparation, where you learn the pedagogy, how to teach that subject area. So you have to prove going into the credential program that you know your subject. And that's what some of those tests that hopefully you've heard about, the CBEST and the CSET, are for. You're proving that you know the subject matter, because we don't teach you that once you get into the credential program. You have to know your subject matter getting into the credential program, because it's only a one-year program typically once you're in the credential. So we're really just teaching you how to teach. We're giving you skills, tools. You do student teaching. I'll touch on some of those things in a little bit, but the credential program is just a 2-semester, 1-year program, so not a lot of time. You have to know your subject matter going in. So that's how California does it. You get a bachelor's degree and then a teaching credential, and bam, you're a teacher. So when we talk to students who are interested in teaching, we talk about how you can use your bachelor's degree. So the general education, you have to take your major classes. You might have a minor. We'll help you pick a minor, because there are lots of minors that will give you some added subject area knowledge to maybe add on supplemental authorizations or other credentials to make you more marketable when you go out looking for a job. So you can be taking all of those classes and the credential program prerequisites all while you're finishing up your bachelor's degree. And typically, if you are seeing an advisor early on and know what those classes are, you can fit them all into your schedule so that you'll still finish them all, like here at Cal State Fullerton, finish them all in 120 units. And any university should be able to help you with that as well. They have a credential program, which all but one of the CSU campuses do. So if you're interested in doing your credential somewhere else, you can even talk to that Cal State and find out what's required to get into their credential program. Chances are you can probably be doing that while you're here at Cal State Fullerton getting your bachelor's degree. So when you graduate, you're often ready to go into a credential program. So we try and help you combine all of that, the center. It's the reason we encourage students to come see us, because our advisors will help you figure out what those classes are, how to fit them all in. You can even double count some things. So your credential program prerequisites, at least one of them in most of our initial credential programs that they require, also count for general education courses. So we'll help you, fit all of those into a nice, neat puzzle and graduate with your 120 units, get your bachelor's degree, and move on into your teaching credential program. So that's your subject matter expertise. Again, in the bachelor's degree, that's really where you're learning about the subject matter. So what do you major in if you want to be a teacher? Because you've probably noticed, especially if you're a student here at Cal State Fullerton, there is no education major. So in the state of California, we want you to learn the subject that you want to teach. So you pick a major based on that. And you'll see this across UCs and Cal States and private schools. They might have education in the major title, but it's not really an education major because you still have to go on and get a teaching credential after your bachelor's degree. So at Cal State Fullerton, if you're interested in working with kids in the elementary school settings or with kids with special needs in the elementary school setting, these are the majors we recommend. And these are just recommendations. They're not, there isn't a specific major required to get into a credential program. You just need a bachelor's degree. But the recommendation is either liberal studies, we call it here at Cal State Fullerton, child and adolescent development, human services, psychology, sociology. Those are all great majors, great preparation for someone who wants to be an elementary school teacher or someone who wants to work with kids at the elementary setting with special needs. And I'll talk a little bit about special ed preparation in a second as well. Liberal studies, child and adolescent development, and human services all have an elementary school setting track. So they're a great major to pick because they really have the preparation embedded in them for the credential that you need to be an elementary school teacher. But again, other majors like psychology or sociology are really, there's probably kinesiology. We do see some comm majors. Psych seems to be pretty popular right now. We do see a lot of psych majors in the center who want to be elementary school teachers. But these are the most popular, I would probably say. But again, just recommendations, not required. So you can pick others as well. So what if you want to be a middle school or high school teacher and or work with kids with special needs in the middle schools or high schools? So in middle school, high school, and I should go back for a second, I didn't mention, at the elementary school settings, you're in one classroom, right, teaching kids multiple subjects with the same kids all day long, right? So you have to know multiple subjects. So that's why some of these majors are better than others, because like liberal studies and child and adolescent development, they pull from lots of different subject areas. So you're getting a little bit of the social sciences, you're getting some of the math, you're getting some of the arts, you're getting all those subject areas that you're going to have to teach when you become an elementary school teacher. Same thing with middle school, high school. You're going to be teaching lots of different kids all day, but one subject. So you want to probably major in that subject. So we do recommend that if you want to teach math, you should major in math. If you want to teach science, you should major in science, whatever the science is. If, same thing with art, English, all of those subject areas. If that's what you ultimately want your single subject to be in, if you want to teach that subject area, obviously you need to know that subject, and the best way to do that is to get a major in that subject area. In California, For the social sciences or history, a lot of students will say, well, I'd love to be a history teacher, which is great, but in California, you wouldn't necessarily just be teaching history. In California, you get what's called a social science credential. So it would authorize you to teach really any of these subject areas. So the probably most common are history, geography, economics, and political science or government. So you could be teaching any of those subject areas in the high schools. So any of those majors would be fine for a social science credential, but probably history, government. We do see a lot of American studies students as well who are interested in the social sciences, but any of those can work. So again, the recommendations: you could major in math and become an elementary school teacher. You could major in liberal studies and become a biology teacher. So the bachelor's degree isn't going to prevent you from getting into a specific credential, but you still have to prove that subject matter knowledge. You have to show that you understand the subject. So I'll tell you how to do that, but are there any questions at this point that I can answer for anybody? I haven't seen anything pop up, and I know, Cynthia, you haven't chimed in with the question, so I'm assuming we're doing okay right now.
We don't have any questions at this time, but I see that everyone likes your backgrounds and your superhero theme.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, perfect. So let me go forward real quick. Let me go back for one quick second. So in terms of the subject matter preparation, I didn't throw any slides in about the CBEST and CSET because that it tends to get a little too heavy in terms of material. So you can certainly reach out to me later on if you have more questions specifically about those tests. But the two tests that you need to prove that you understand the subject matter, one is the CSET. That's really where you're proving your subject matter. And then we also have what's called the CBEST, and that's a basic skills requirement. So every teacher has to pass, or future teacher has to either pass the CBEST exam, or there are alternative ways to meet that basic skills requirement. And so the basic skills are a sixth grade understanding of reading, writing, and math. So the CBEST is a test, or if you took the SAT or ACT and scored a certain amount, you may have met the requirement without having to take the CBEST. Also, if you took AP English and or math in high school, there's, we call it early assessment program. You may have taken your high school, what do they call it now? I always forget, Smarter Balance exam. It used to be called other things. So when you were in high school, if you took that exam and got an EAP assessment, you may have met the basic skills requirement. So if any of those things are kind of like, I think I took that, but I'm not really sure, we can double check that for you and tell you if you've met the basic skills requirement without taking the CBEST. But if you don't mean it that way, you've got to take the CBEST. Once you pass that, it's good for life. You don't have to worry about it. The other exam, the CSET, is really where you're proving that, like if you want to be a math teacher in high school, you have to prove that you understand the math content. So you either take the CSET, and we have CSETs in all the subject areas that you can get a single subject credential in, or in some cases, not all, but in some cases, you can complete what's called a subject matter preparation plan. And that's a list of classes, typically a major and maybe some additional classes like our credential prerequisites. If you finish those classes, you get to waive the CSET. So you've proven your subject matter knowledge by passing those classes versus taking the test. So those options aren't available for the science credentials. We don't offer it for art. So if that's something that you're interested in, that's what we do in the center, is help you figure out, you know, if I want to be, you know, an English teacher, can I take the CSET, or do I have the option to do these list of classes, the subject matter preparation plan, so I don't have to take the CSET? So we'll tell you what your options are, and we'll figure out a way to make it most easy for you. Because obviously standardized testing is not fun either. So there are other opportunities, but that's something we'll help you figure out, because it's really kind of on an individual basis. So I didn't want to go in too much detail about that, but I did want to mention in terms of proving your subject matter knowledge, you do have to do that one way or another in order to get into our credential programs. So I I do see a question about suggestions for CBEST and CSET preparation. That's a really good one. We do get that a lot. We actually just offered on Monday a CBEST workshop through the center. Our two advisors, Jack and Talia, hosted that workshop. So if you weren't able to attend, hopefully we'll do it again in the fall. The CBEST, one of the things I would probably recommend, we have a library in the center. You're welcome to come in and check out our CBEST and CSET prep books. So that's doing really studying on your own time. But we do offer the books to check out for free. There's no charge to do that. And we have a 2-week checkout period. So you can use the books. You can make copies. We ask that you don't write in them or anything because we do, of course, reuse them for other students. But you're welcome to check them out. If you need them for longer than 2 weeks, we can usually extend that deadline. But a lot of students come in and use those books because obviously once you pass the exams, you're probably never going to use them again. So at least you can come and check them out for free. Some of our departments do offer CSET prep, but depending on the subject area, we don't offer all of them. So there is one coming up if you're interested in the math credential. There is the CSET review session coming up for the math CSET. And then also for, I believe it was Korean, I want to say Korean CSET, for one of the world language credential programs. So every now and again, some of our departments will offer those. And of course, we share that out with our students. So make sure you check in with the center, check our Facebook page and things like that. We usually email those things out as well. So make sure you're on our email distribution list. But there isn't, we don't offer really formalized tutoring for either of those tests because we just unfortunately don't have the resources. There are some good websites. I definitely recommend going to the website for the CBEST and CSET in terms of registering for a test and all of that. You can, of course, take their sample tests, look at the questions, review, see what maybe areas maybe you didn't do so well, and you can certainly reach out to faculty who are maybe in those subject areas and ask for some help there. We do have some reading tutors in the center, or not in the center, excuse me, in the reading department, our literacy and reading department. They've been quite helpful for some students, especially with the CBEST. So there are some things out there. We just unfortunately don't have tutoring for those exams. So hopefully those resources help. And if you do need more information about any of those, you can certainly reach out to me and I'll send those to you. But come check out our library in the center. It's pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead into and talk about a little bit more about the credential program. So we talked about the preparation for a credential program. So what does it take to get in while you're finishing up your bachelor's degree? There are other admission requirements as well. And I will show you, let me go to this really quickly. This is something we can email out to you, but you can also come and get it in the center. Hopefully you can see this. Jack, one of our advisors, put together this lovely credential fact sheet to show all the initial credential programs we offer at Cal State Fullerton, and then all the different admission requirements to each. And so you can see it's, you know, quite a process to apply to the credential. Most of this you can be doing while you're working on your undergraduate degree. We also have what we call Credential Overview. So you'll see here, this row here. Each of our initial credential programs does their own overview. You're welcome to go to all 3 of them, but you only have to go to the one for which you're really interested in. So like if you want to get a multiple subject credential, and I'll explain a little bit more about what that is if you're not familiar with the multiple subject credential. You would attend that overview to learn about that program. They're offered multiple times a month, typically throughout the semester.
Web seminar from my school for the teaching program. So it's kind of weird. I'm doing it on my phone, so my hand's like.
I think someone. I don't think that was a question. I think someone might have unmuted their. Oh, thank you. Sounded like a question for a second. So anyway, definitely attend an overview if you're, especially, you can really attend them anytime, but if you are at least a junior or senior now, I would highly recommend that you attend the overview.
Not unmuted when I said all that.
Okay, I'm sorry, Amy. I just muted her.
Okay.
Also, I did want to mention she is on her phone, so she can't see your screen.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, thank you for letting me know.
No problem. And I just, I muted her, so we're all good.
Okay, perfect. So unfortunately, if you can hear me, I'm happy to email these documents to you as well. So I apologize if you can't see any of this, but definitely happy to share. So let me go back to my PowerPoint. So what is a credential program? How do I stop the annotate? There we go. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but a credential program is after the bachelor's degree, so we typically call it a fifth-year program because you're not getting a degree. It's a credential program. It's kind of like a license. You don't get a master's degree. It's not a bachelor's degree. It's kind of in between, and you're getting a credential from the state of California. You might take the classes with us and do your preparation with us, but your credential actually comes from the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, not from Cal State Fullerton. So when you get it, it literally looks like a license. You'll get a certificate when you finish. So you're authorized to teach in the state of California, basically, is what you're getting. You do have to complete student teaching in the program. So typically, like I said, it's a two semester program, so 1 year. Most of our programs you can start in fall or spring, just depending on some of the single subject programs only have a fall start time, so you can't do spring, but most of our programs are fall or spring start, so you could finish in 1 year either way. If you graduate with your bachelor's degree in December, you could potentially go right into a credential program the following spring. But you do have to do student teaching during the credential program, which is why, it sounds like a year. It's not a lot of time, pretty quick, but it is pretty intense. So you're doing coursework and you're doing student teaching. And each of the credential programs sets up their student teaching a little bit differently. But you have a minimum number of hours you have to do. And of course, you're pretty much in a classroom with your master teacher like you're a teacher. So when they show up to start the day, you have to be there and you end the day with them. So it's like a full-time job for that time that you're doing your student teaching. So it can be pretty intense because it's hard to work. You can, but we don't recommend it. But of course, that's not easy for everybody. And in addition, you're doing classes. You have to prepare for what are called teacher performance evaluations, which is they're things that you have to pass in order to move forward in the program. So there's lots of things going on during the credential program. And obviously this time is quite important because this is where you're getting the pedagogy. You're learning how to teach your subject matter. And in a year, you can imagine that's not a lot of time to do that. And really even 2 semesters of student teaching. And for most of our programs, you're not doing your student teaching every week. So you're really not getting a ton of time in the classroom with someone who's sort of watching and protecting you in a safe space and giving you constructive criticism or constructive feedback about your teaching. So a year goes by really fast. I'm sure you can all imagine. But anyway, just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what the credential program is like once you start that process. So let's try to do poll number 2, which hopefully this will work. And I'm not even sure how I got poll number 1. I don't do the poll thing anymore. Are you able to initiate poll number 2, Cynthia? I don't see my polling button anymore. Oh, yay, thank you. So hopefully you all can see poll number 2. If you can complete that. I just want to get a feel for your teaching interest at this point. Give everyone a minute or 2, and I'm realizing my time's already running out. I'm gonna probably go over an hour. I don't know if you can see. Hopefully, do you have any results showing up? Oh, thank you. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this. So it looks like mostly elementary, middle school. Very cool. And so, oh, cool, science. and maybe physical ed and with special needs. Okay, maybe one or two. Okay, perfect. So hopefully I touch on these a little bit as well. Okay, cool, thank you. So this was a little piece of the chart I know some of you may not have been able to see it, so I pulled some little tidbits from that chart, that flyer I was trying to show you earlier. But we have 3 initial teaching programs at Cal State Fullerton. So I'll just quickly go over each of these in terms of your preparation to become a teacher. So for those of you who are interested in becoming an elementary school teacher, you're going to want to get the multiple subject credential that authorizes you to teach students in the transitional kindergarten through 8th grade. So it does actually authorize you to teach through middle school. It's not 6th grade. So I just wanted to point that out as well, so you can actually have a multiple subject credential or a single subject credential and teach middle school. So that's kind of an interesting middle area there. You do, again, have to prove your subject basic skills and the subject matter with the CSET. So you would meet those requirements based on those 2 tests, or the alternative with the basic skills that I mentioned earlier. Right now, the multiple subject program does not have the alternative waiver for the CSET, but we did just recently submit an application to renew that. So if that happens, and this might be too late for some of you because you're graduating soon, so you wouldn't want to go back and take classes, you would probably just want to take the CSET. But for future students, that waiver might come back, so you would be able to take classes instead of taking the CSET. And then our 3 prerequisite courses are listed here as well. So you need a human development course, and there's a couple of courses you can do at Fullerton to meet that requirement. And then our 2 elementary ed courses, 315 and 325. The first 2 classes, the human development and the elementary ed 315, you could actually potentially complete at a community college if need be. Then if you're interested in teaching middle school or high school, you would want to get a single subject credential, because that authorizes you to teach 1 subject area, typically in grades 6 through 12, but you can also use a single subject credential in the multiple school setting or the elementary school setting. You would just only be allowed to teach that 1 subject. So for example, music teachers who teach at the elementary school level probably just have a single subject credential in music, but they're working in the elementary school setting. So it does authorize you to teach with grades before 6th grade. You're just only authorized to teach that 1 subject area. And then again, you have to prove your basic skills and then the subject matter. But in some subjects, you can take the CSET or the subject matter plan. So you do have the option in some of those credentials. And then the 4 prerequisite courses listed there. These are secondary ed courses, 310, 320, 330, and 340. I forgot to mention the elementary ed 325 double counts as a GE course, and then I'm going to forget which one, the secondary ed, I think it's 320 double counts as the general ed class, but don't quote me on that. And some of these, a little harder to find at the community college, but some of these you could do at the community college as well. And then for those who might be interested in working with kids with special needs, so the preparation for a special ed teacher or an education specialist teacher is based on the age group you want to work with. So if you want to work with kids with special needs at the elementary school level, you actually follow the same pathway as an elementary school teacher. And conversely, if you wanted to work with middle school or high school kids with special needs, you would follow the same pathway as a student who's going on to a single subject credential. So that's just generally speaking how special ed works. So if you have more questions about that, we'd be happy to help you figure all of that out. But it does authorize you to work with kids with physical and or learning disabilities. And we have 3, not really concentrations, but kind of like concentration areas for the credential. You could get the early childhood credential, a mild moderate credential, or a moderate severe credential, and that just depends on either the group you want to work with and or the level of disability that the student has. And again, you have the basic skills and CSET requirements, and then your 3 prerequisite courses for that program as well. Right now, none of these unfortunately double count as general ed courses, but they have applied to ask the university if one of them could, so you may be able to double count that. So that's kind of just generally speaking the credential program. Once you have an initial teaching credential, there's lots of other things you can do to add on to your initial credential to make you more marketable. So one thing we really try to push in the center is the bilingual authorization, because obviously with the students we serve at Cal State Fullerton, we see many bilingual students. And so the bilingual authorization is something that you can do actually while you're completing your initial credential in either the multiple, single, or education specialist credentials. You can add that. It's basically 2 additional classes. If you are already bilingual, we can help you figure out how to do that so that when you leave the credential program, potentially you would have a bilingual authorization, which tells school districts that, you know, A, you're bilingual, and B, you have the knowledge and the skills to work with parents and family members and children in those communities. So you're really more marketable, especially in our school districts that have those dual language programs are popping up all over. So students are learning in many cases, you know, 2 languages, so it could be English and Spanish. So as those kids age, they're going to need bilingual teachers, you know, through high school. Otherwise, what's the point of starting a dual language program? So if you are already bilingual, I would say continue to beef up your skills. It's one thing to be able to speak another language, but to be able to read and write it is a skill you're also going to need to add the bilingual authorization. So that's something I would definitely encourage you to consider, and we can help you figure out how to do that. There are other things like a foundational level credential. We have math and science here at Cal State Fullerton. Once you have an initial teaching credential, there's 1 methods course you could take in the summer after, or the semester after you finish that initial credential, and add on a foundational level credential in math or science. So again, making you more marketable. If you want to be an administrator eventually, you do want to have some teaching experience first. But once you're ready, if you want to be an administrator, principal, superintendent, someone like that, there's an administrative credential you can add on. And then we, of course, at Fullerton also have the reading specialist program, which allows you to work with kids, but it also allows you to work in the college settings as well, which has been really cool. So lots of, and these are just a few opportunities. I didn't even mention all of them. So lots of different things you can go into and add on to an initial teaching credential to make yourself more marketable and do more specialized work. And then of course there's graduate and doctoral degrees, which I will kind of go into a little bit.
Hi, Amy. So we have a couple questions.
Okay.
As you were talking, I thought of a couple of questions that the participants may want to know.
Okay.
But apparently I don't know how to spell the word job. So,
okay.
So maybe you want to talk about the center and how they help support jobs.
Okay.
And Saima, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, would like to know if the center helps with paid internships. That's a great question.
That is a really good question.
And then also one more question about job interviews. So like maybe getting a job as a teacher is very different from working at Target.
Absolutely.
If there's any help.
There is. That's a really good question. So the College of Ed has a career specialist, and his name is Miguel Martinez. He actually works through the Career Center here on campus, but he works very closely with the College of Ed because he's our career specialist. So he knows about jobs in education and teaching specifically. So he comes into the center 1 night a week. He comes in from 4 to 7 on Tuesday evenings, and he's happy to meet with students to look at your resume or cover letter, or just talk about, the interview process. He'll do a mock interview with you so you can get a little bit of experience if you don't have a ton of interview experience. The Career Center will actually even videotape you in a mock interview setting so you can watch yourself and get some feedback and see what you really look like in an interview, which I know sounds super intimidating, but totally worth it if you have the time to do that. So yeah, he will absolutely, and he also understands EdJoin, which is a website. If you Google EdJoin, if you haven't heard of it, it's a website that a lot of school districts, pretty much all of them, use to post their jobs. And so you really need to understand that website and how to navigate it and how to post your resume and how to apply for jobs and things like that, because most of the school districts use that as their first tool to collect applicants. And he's doing a boot camp this Saturday, where our teacher job fair is next Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, March 13th. So he does a boot camp in preparation for that and covers all of these things, interviews and resumes, and he'll do resume reviews. And we have retired teachers coming who will look at your resume. So tons of stuff like that goes on through the center and through the Career Center. So Miguel Martinez, know his name. He will be quite useful. We do not really do anything with paid internships, but one thing I will say, some of the majors, depending on which one you have, so like child and adolescent development, they do require field work in one of their courses, and you have to go through the Center for Internships and Community Engagement. Most of those are not paid. You have to do them as a course. You're getting course credit to do that. You need a certain number of hours. But you can also go through that center, the Center for Internships and Community Engagement, to look for paid internships. They might have some. The Career Center does also post them. The one thing I will add, though, in terms of internships, in the high needs teaching areas, so typically math, science, and special ed, the districts are always looking for teachers, and so they have an internship option, which means that if you, and I don't know all the details in terms of getting through the credential program this way, so I can direct you to people who can help you with that, but if you're coming into the credential program and you've been offered a job by a school district, you just don't yet have your credential, you can accept that job and use your work as a teacher in that classroom as your student teaching. So you're getting paid to do your student teaching. So that is an option for some of our programs, but it's typically those high need subject areas because they're so desperate for teachers. So that's an opportunity too once you get to the credential program. It might be a little bit, I wouldn't say harder to get a paid internship as an undergraduate. It's just not going to be in something as specific as, like student teaching. You can definitely get time, maybe volunteering in a classroom, excuse me, or things like that. There are some summer programs. I'm just trying to think of things off the top of my head that are probably out there that are not necessarily internships, but paid, employment, things like that. That would be great experience for a future teacher. So I'd say definitely check out the Center for Internships and Community Engagement and the Career Center. Those are probably the two best resources for those things. Good questions. Okay, let me see where I'm at. I know I'm getting so close. Yeah, I have like 2 minutes left. So I'm going to rush through this slide I kind of already covered, but this is where I'm going to go into some of those other areas in education. So we do see a lot of students who want to be college professors, which is awesome. To be a college professor, you don't have to have a teaching credential. The credential is for, again, the transitional kindergarten through 12th grade. That's what's required in the state of California. Typically, to be a college professor, you want to have at least a master's degree. That's minimally what they're looking for. And it's, again, recommended that you have a degree in the subject you want to teach. So that's, across the board, I think what most colleges and universities, even community colleges, look for. To have what we call a tenure track position at a college or university, you're really going to need a terminal degree like a PhD or an EDD or whatever the equivalent is in your content area. But that's really probably going to be required if you're looking for a job like that. Our professors in the College of Education, though, do have teaching credentials because, of course, they're teachers teaching teachers, but they do have to have, K-12 teaching experience as well. So all of our faculty, for the most part, have a teaching credential. So that's kind of unique. So you may want to get your teaching credential, teach in the K-12 setting for a few years, and go on and get your PhD or EDD in education and come back and teach teachers, which all of our faculty have done. So that's an option as well. Let's see. The student affairs practitioners. Definitely a growing field, especially since I've been here at Cal State Fullerton. And those are the folks who want to work with college students in the student service areas. So those are your academic advisors, your financial aid counselors, the staff you see that work orientation, that go out and do recruitment for the university, who work in housing, work in student life, those kinds of areas. So here at Cal State Fullerton, we have the master's program in higher ed, like I mentioned at the very beginning. So that if that's something that you're interested in, it doesn't give you the ability to teach typically. It's not a teaching degree, but you're still working in education and working with students, which is a lot of fun, and that's really what most of my background is in. So be happy to talk to you about that as well if you'd like to learn more. I just saw a question here. Would it be a detriment to have 2 master's degrees before getting a terminal degree? No, I don't think so. It honestly depends on what your goals are. And it kind of, if like ultimately you do want to have a tenure track position as a college professor, you're going to need that terminal degree, but I don't know that a master's degree would be to your detriment. Obviously, the more degrees you have, the maybe better qualified you are in terms of teaching a certain subject matter, but it really just depends on what your ultimate goals are. And somebody asked about writing down those resources. I think Cynthia, yeah, she posted, this is in the chat, you'll see Cynthia posted the EdJoin website. And then Miguel Martinez, his information there from the Career Center. And then the other resource was the Center for Internships and Community Engagement. And so instructional design and technology, Cynthia, do you want to say a little bit about that?
Of course. So just real quick, it is a fully online master's degree program. About half of the students in the program are K-12 teachers. So they've already earned their teaching credential. They're teaching in the classroom. However, instead of earning a master's degree in curriculum instruction, which is typically the way students go, they earn a master's degree in instructional design and technology. And what that does is kind of opens up the door for them a little bit more. So they're not limited just to teaching in the classroom, but they can actually develop curriculum. And so a lot of our students kind of step out of their role as a K-12 teacher and move into a corporate setting like Apple, Google, Yahoo, Disney, Tesla, Toyota, all those different corporations. And they actually design curriculum and training for that field instead. So they take all the skills that they acquired as a classroom teacher, and instead of teaching kids, they design the training, and it's usually geared towards teaching adults. But you'd be very surprised to know that teaching kids is just like teaching adults. You use that same skill set that you have as a classroom teacher, and you just kind of turn the corner a little bit, and now you develop the curriculum for online instruction or even face-to-face instruction, and you put together curriculum units. So it may be something to think of down the line after you earn your teaching credential and have some experience teaching, and then you're thinking about pursuing a master's degree. It's kind of twofold, because once you earn a master's degree, like Aimee mentioned at the beginning of her presentation, you move over on the pay scale. So you earn more money in your current teaching careers, but you can also have an opportunity to look at this different field, which is called instructional design. And if you take a look at like Indeed.com or one of those job sites, and you just type in the words instructional design, you'll get about 2 million hits.
Wow.
Because it's a high demand career field. The pay is pretty good, but unlike teaching, you don't have the luxury of having summers off. You have to work. And there are contract positions available as well. So if you want to design instruction just during the summer or Christmas break or kind of part-time on the side, there's also that opportunity as well. That's about it. I'll put the website to the master's program in the chat window if you want to explore it a little bit more, or you're always welcome to reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think the last one I have in here is school counselor. We do have a lot of students interested in this as well. We unfortunately don't have a program here at Cal State Fullerton. We used to. I think it ended in the 90s. But anyway, in order to be a school counselor at the school districts, you need to have a different type of credential, which is called the Pupil Personnel Service Credential. Cal State Dominguez Hills and Long Beach are two local Cal States that have those programs, and it's typically part of a master's program, so you get the credential and a master's degree. I believe in both programs you can get the credential separately, but the way it's designed, it's almost worth your time because you're so close to the master's degree. With the number of units you need in the credential, you might as well just get the master's as well. But there are more programs in the state, so I listed the CTC website there. That's the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. They're the accrediting body for any credential program in the state of California. So you can't have a credential program without being approved by the CTC. So they have a list of all the approved programs in the state. If you're not near like Long Beach or Dominguez Hills, but you're interested in that program, you can look for more Pupil Personnel Service Credential programs. So I just wanted to mention that one because it is pretty popular. There's also a couple of other things I probably should have added on here. We also have students who want to be speech pathologists. We actually do have that program here, and there is a credential you can get specifically for that. It's in the College of Communication, so it's not under the College of Education, but it is here at Cal State Fullerton. And then school nurse, of course, is also a credential that you can get. If you're already an RN, you can add that credential and work in the school districts as a school nurse. So those are some other opportunities I didn't mention on here. So I know I'm over time a little bit, so hopefully you guys are hanging in there with me. But if you are interested in being a teacher, your next steps really are to come into the center. If you haven't yet, we'll make sure that you've taken the right courses, you're on the right pathway for whatever your career goals are. So we'll look and see if you're taking the right GEs, the right major classes, credential prereqs if you need that, or just talk about what you can do to best prepare. We're happy to help you with that. Attend a credential overview, as I mentioned. If you are interested in the credential program, make sure you do those sooner rather than later, because you really do want to be applying. If you are interested in going right into a credential program after your bachelor's degree, it really is a whole year, your senior year, that you're applying to the credential program. So you need to give yourself some time to prepare. If you don't have any classroom experience, I would say get in the classroom. Volunteer if you have maybe a local school district, maybe a school that you went to, if you still live near those schools. Reach out to a teacher and say, hey, I'd love to come in and just observe you or volunteer in your classroom, and maybe get a summer job working at a YMCA or a counselor at a program, or do something with kids. You really need to get that hands-on experience to make sure that it is something you're going to enjoy doing, because you don't want to spend so much time and money getting a credential and then your first experience be your student teaching. And really, we do want you to have some experience with kids. We do interview you and ask those kinds of questions. So we might encourage you to get some experience before we admitted you anyway, but you would hate to get to that point, start a credential program and realize, I don't want to work with kids. That would be awful. So get in the classroom if you haven't done that yet. Try to get some experience there. The prerequisites for the credential programs, whichever three, if you choose one of our three, they do have observation hours required in at least one of the prereqs. So you will get that. But the more experience you get, really, the better prepared you'll be when you get to the credential program as well. And then you can start networking and meet teachers and conduct those informational interviews, which are really going to benefit you in the long run. So here's our contact information. I wanted to throw that out there, and my contact information again, of course, to make sure that you know how to contact us. So as I mentioned, we're in EC 379. Our website is listed there, our email, and then the center's phone number, and then my direct information is listed there at the bottom. And I'll bring that back up in a second. I know I'm going to skim through this really quick, but I do have a couple more slides. I wanted to make sure to show you this slide for sure. Lots of questions about financial aid, and I'm not a financial aid counselor, so I won't go into this in too much detail. But what I would tell you is that if you are receiving financial aid as an undergraduate student, you want to fill out the free application for federal student aid the same way you do for the undergrad programs. You would do that for the credential programs, because you do potentially qualify for loans and grants as a credential student. There are also things like the Teach grant that's listed there at the bottom. That grant does have a teaching obligation attached to it, so make sure you read the fine print before you take that money, because if you don't meet the teaching obligation, it's a federal grant, so they would make you repay it like a loan, and then of course they add interest to that. So make sure you understand what you're signing up for before you take the Teach grant. There are lots of loan forgiveness programs for teachers though, so if you do take out student loans either as an undergrad or through your credential program, if you ultimately do become a teacher and you have student loans, look into things like this website right here. Tells you all about the different loan forgiveness programs. The public service loan forgiveness is perfect for teachers because you're public servants, so you would probably qualify for this. You do have to pay your loans for 10 years before you can take advantage of the forgiveness, but it's still better than paying 100% of them. So there's lots of things out there. I would just say do your homework because so many students don't take advantage of some of these things, and so you miss out. And then the last thing I would say is scholarships. We have tons of scholarships in the College of Ed. So if you're a current undergraduate student, you won't necessarily qualify, but as you're applying for our credential programs, you should also be applying for our scholarships because you may be able to get one or two of those that will help offset. Like if you have to take out any student loans, maybe you won't need to because you get a scholarship. So just make sure, like I said, do your homework and fill out all that information. Fill out the FAFSA or the California Dream Act if you're a dreamer, and make sure you ask questions so you understand everything you're getting. And then these are some good resources as well. I mentioned EdJoin earlier. Cynthia put that one up there in the chat box as well. The College of Ed website is listed there. The Commission on Teacher Credentialing, that's where all, like I mentioned, all the approved credential programs are listed there. So if you're looking for something that we don't have at Cal State Fullerton, somebody else will have it. So definitely look on their website. California Department of Ed, of course, lots of good information there, probably more information about scholarships and things like that, different financial aid resources, and then of course the U.S. Department of Ed. Lots education can be kind of political, so it's good to understand some of those things as well. So definitely encourage you to look into those resources. And here I did have to give credit to my superhero template. I did find this online and I downloaded it, so I had to give credit there to be fair. And then I think that is it. I have I went way over time. I'm so sorry about that, but I appreciate you guys hanging in there. Are there any more questions I can answer for you?
It doesn't look like there's questions in the chat window. You did share a lot of information. Thank you so much, Amy. Oh, actually, I think there's two messages. Everyone said thank you so much.
Thank you.
Those of you who are still on, if you could please complete the survey. I posted the link in there, and the title of our webinar tonight was Superheroes Wanted. We do take a look at the surveys, and then we try to offer different webinars to help meet your interests and your needs. So, for example, last semester, someone asked that we offer a webinar about how to become a teacher. So this week we had Aimee coming on and sharing with us how to become a teacher.
That's awesome. I do see one quick question from Saima. Does the preschool experience help? It absolutely does, especially if you want to be an elementary school teacher. And preschool is that weird age. If you're talking about like birth through maybe 3 or 4 years old, that might be a little too early. But for the elementary school or multiple subject credential, you want to try to get like the transitional kindergarten preschool or kindergarten experience. And it's not required. Any work with kids, any experience with kids is going to be beneficial. It's just in terms of what the credentials authorize you to do. The multiple subject credential would not authorize you to work with preschool kids. You actually don't need a credential for that. There's a certificate you can get, and really you just need child development units. So that's a little bit separate. But if you want to work with kids with special needs in the preschool setting, you would get the early childhood special ed credential. So there's a couple of different ways you can go about it. But any experience with kids would be beneficial if you want to be a teacher. Absolutely.
And I second that, Aimee. Actually, Saima, I was an elementary teacher, and before I was an elementary teacher, I was a preschool teacher. So a lot of the lesson planning that went into the preschool class and working with kids and the classroom management skills that I learned as a preschool teacher, it really helped me when I became an elementary teacher.
That's cool. Thank you for sharing that. I'm a preschool teacher. Oh, very cool. Santa Ana Unified is great. They have a, are you a paraprofessional? Sorry, I know I'm getting a little personal. No, okay. They have a great program, so I was going to refer you to somebody. But anyway, maybe send me an email. Let me go back to my, where's my contact information? Send me an email, because maybe eventually you can be a part of this program. A teacher with a program. Oh, okay. You might be able to send me an email. My email's on the screen now. Send me an email. I'll connect you to someone in the district that might be able to put you into a program that could help you with the credential. So I'm glad you said something. So any other questions before we end?
I think that's about it, Aimee. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate all the information you shared. It was wonderful.
Absolutely.
And thank you all for attending. And
yeah.
this webinar is recorded and it'll be posted on YouTube. So if you want to share it with your friends, by all means.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia, for hosting and helping me figure out how to do this. I survived my first webinar.